Hey guys, how's it going here? Danny Fitzy, and today I'm just going to be going over a build that I've played many hours in this league, in Heist League, and this is a Orb of Storms slash Ball Lightning Assassin. Orb of Storms is something that I play a lot on League Start because it scales incredibly well. It clears really well, so you can get your Atlas completion done really quickly, and it requires pretty much no investment at the start to get rolling. One of your best in slots until you craft like a GG staff, so your weapon, is actually worth like nothing. This one here, it gives you +2, gives you some lightning damage to spells, gives you some lightning damage, a shit ton of int, which is always nice. And the lightning pen in this kind of setup that I've got right now is kind of irrelevant because we converted it all to cold, but at the start, when you don't have Call of the Brotherhood, the lightning pen's obviously very good for killing bosses and stuff. And all round, it's just a great build. It just does everything at the start of a league with zero currency, basically. So I always default back to this if I'm having troubles with any of my league starters, which I did this league because I started splitting steel, and I don't want to go into that because that was an absolute mess. But here, I'm just going to run... And we're going to run a map, obviously, for showcase purposes. So obviously, if you don't want to see me smacking my keys and talking bullshit for the next 5 minutes. This is a no regen map, but we'll be fine because we've got a Cinder Swallow. There's nothing special going on here. I'm not going to juice the map up too much. It just take longer to loot and all that shit. But it's just to give you kind of a... a look at what the build can do. So you can see instantly right there around that shrine. There is a pretty hefty explosion chain effect going on, right? And that is coming from the combination of Impulses and Storm's Gift, which I'll get into after the run, obviously. But what it allows you to do is have a pseudo explodey chest. Instead of taking up one mod on a chest, though, it requires you to have two items, which is kind of annoying. And as you can see, we're not the tankiest thing in the world. We're an assassin, so you do kind of have to kill everything before it kills you, unfortunately. So I wouldn't recommend this for bossing. It can do Conquerors. It could probably do Cyrus if you're skilled enough and you know the fight, but I haven't been able to kill Cyrus on this guy yet, simply because I'm just terrible at that fight. We'll get some single target example here. Hit your Wave of Conviction and then just stand there and cast. And you can see he died before he went off then. As you can see, Ball Lightning's got some pretty juicy ramp there, so... I don't need to show any more than that. I think that gives you a good example of the build there. You've got some clear speed, you've got some single target, more than enough to be able to, get Atlas completion, even complete the game, to be honest. It doesn't really require too much, but I'll show you how far you can take it and how to get to the result I am right now. So we'll go through gear, gem links, flasks, then the passive tree. So to start off with gear, you're gonna need for the clear to be as insane as what you've just seen there. You're gonna need a combination of Impulses and Storm's Gift. You don't need Storm's Gift per se, but what this allows you to do is Impulses. Essentially, you're getting it for the explosion on kill. So when you kill a shocked enemy, you're doing 5% of their life as lightning damage, which cannot shock. Now that's the important part of that. So what this essentially means is this chest explosion that procs when you kill someone that's shocked, it cannot blow up and then blow up another mob because it cannot shock when it deals damage. So the way you get around this to allow this thing to chain off itself is you use Storm's Gift, because there's a line here that reads, enemies you kill are shocked. And these two in combination mean if a mob blows up, gets killed, technically everything you kill, everything you touch is going to be shocked. So everything you kill is always going to explode anyway by default. But then when the Impulsor explodes and hits mobs and kills them, they explode because they're technically shocked now. And you can see how you get a screen full of poof and everything just disappears. in combination with how quick Orba Storms just chains out and hits like 10, 20 mobs at a time as well. So you're getting multiple explosions right off the bat to kick that chain reaction off. It's just an insane combo. The only problem is these don't really have anything else going for them. They have some, they have proliferate. I can't say the word. Proliferate. I can never say that word. But yeah, so your shocks will spread to nearby enemies. All this does really is cause lag. Honestly, if you take these off, you'll get much better FPS as well. It's not too bad if you're on Vulcan, but yeah, if you've got serious lag issues and you're using these this item, take it off and see how you do. I imagine you'll get a lot of performance back. And I guess because these are synthesized items, you can get some really nice implicits. But I have a cheap pair that just give me cold damage and cast speed, which are two things that do benefit me, so they're not completely pointless. Rarities, whatever. But yeah, so obviously Impulses also gives you some nice damage, bit of life, and you can't be affected by shock, which is a nice defensive layer, I suppose. With on an assassin anyway, you're going to get one shot by stuff if you don't kill it quick enough anyway, so that's just the way it is. But those two right there are basically the Crusader mod that you get on a chest. So if you can afford to make an explodey chest, that is going to work out 1,000 times better than this. The only thing I will say about the explodey chest is you don't scale it as well as you would this, because obviously this is all lightning damage. We're scaling lightning damage, we're converting our lightning damage, we're getting even more damage. So these explosions are doing a lot of damage, whereas an explodey chest won't do as much damage, but it's only one mod on a chest, right? So you free up the rest of the chest slot and a glove slot, so you can probably make that damage back. And Orba Storms cleans up pretty well anyway, so it's entirely up to you. You can try it. I haven't tried on this current setup, an explodey chest, so I can't give my 2 cents on that, but I'm sure it can't be that much worse than this, just because that mod is just extremely OP for map clear. It's nutty. So yeah, so those two things I would say are mandatory. Maybe not the gloves, but the impulses is mandatory, I'd say, for this build to work. Everything revolves around that explosion clear. And then these are being paired with Call of the Brotherhood. Now these are not mandatory, but once again, this is going to allow you to do a lot more damage, and it's also going to allow you to freeze and shatter stuff, which means you get Herald of Ice explosions, which is also extra clear, and chain reactions going off. You know, as an assassin, your Herald of Ice actually hits pretty hard, and you can even do a full build around Herald of Ice if you want to, but we're just using it really for the MTX at this point, because the Herald of Ice is not really doing much damage compared to what the Impulse is doing. So, but yeah, we're converting all of it, and with the quality on the rings, you can get your lightning to convert to cold to almost 50%. So we're only missing 4% of our damage conversion. And what conversion is allowing us to do here is scale lightning and cold and ele damage. So elemental damage is going to double dip basically, because it's going to increase your lightning, which then get converted to cold, which is then getting increased because it's then cold damage, and it's also ele damage. And obviously we can get any source of lightning and cold damage is brilliant. So it just makes that. It just means you got to use both your slots. You could probably get away with only using one of these, and then maybe some other ring with curse on hit or something. You probably don't need full conversion, but I've chose to play it this way, and it's worked out pretty well so far. So, and also your spells have 100% chance to shock against frozen enemies. So once you start doing enough cold damage with assassin, 100% crit, you're just going to be shocking everything as well, so that's like at least a 15% damage increase on everything, so that's also very nice. But note, this is your spells, and this does not proc impulses to chain. You still need the gloves, even though the wording can look a little bit suspect there. It's just your spells have 100% chance to shock. This is not considered a spell, I don't believe. And I can definitely notice a difference on the chain reaction explosions when I take the gloves off, so I just assume, based on that test, that it doesn't work like that. But yeah, and you get some lightning damage and some and some reses as the implicit, which is quite nice. Help us fill out our reses. Our weapon, obviously, like I said, like I showed the staff at the start, you can't craft a nice staff that gives more damage than this thing. The Anger Rod or whatever. Anger Rod West. You can even go south if you want, but I think the added damage to spells is quite nice. This thing will do you fine for the longest time. As you can see, I had a 5-link once for the longest of time, so my ball lightning was on a 5-link for ages until I reached T16s basically. So this build can do it pretty well with cheap gear. But this thing is just so good all around. But like I said, if you're converting all your damage, the damage pen from this staff is not as useful as it would be if you were full lightning. But so you could go just one Call of the Brotherhood, use that, get a bit more effectiveness out of the damage pen, because that's where you're going to really need the damage against bosses, and that's where like penetration comes in strong. But here I've just bought a I think it's a temple mod staff. As you can see, it's got the non-chaos as extra. You can get that as a craft. So if you have the T1 craft, you can get 8% non-chaos extra chaos with like up to 90% spell damage or 80% spell damage. So if you want to craft your own one, I would say alt spam until you hit +3 alt lightning gems, and then whatever else you get, and then you can just craft on the spell damage and non-chaos extra chaos, because those two stats alone are your biggest increases on a weapon. And then anything after that is just gravy. Obviously on an eclipse staff, give you that global crit, make you reach that 100% crit chance as an assassin. That will literally top you off there. But it doesn't have to be. You could do it on another staff if you happen to find one that's already really well rolled. It's not too much of an issue. I've even got increased spell crit here on my staff as well, and multi. So this is a really nice staff. And then eventually it did 6-link. This staff was one of the most most consuming of all my fusings this league. It took about over 1,000. I didn't keep count. I kind of cried a little bit. I know that's still below average, but when everything else in the league links a little bit easier, and then you have one that just keeps going and eats all your currency, it feels bad, man. So, but yeah, anything like that. Like I said, this thing is worth. I bought it 5C at the start of the league. It's probably literally worth an alchemy orb at this point. I would even say if you can't be asked to make a staff, 6-link this, and it will carry you to endgame just fine. It will just be like, 10-20% more less damage, so to say, if you're using this over something like this. But yeah, so OP. I don't think there's any other staffs I can think off the top of my head that would work as well. Just make sure you're scaling your lightning spells. I know we're converting all to cold, but our base gems are lightning, so if you're a slightly newer player and that's a little bit confusing, make sure it's lightning. In terms of like increased damages, you can get cold and lightning if you're converting, but for this, +3 of all are lightning, because Orb of Storms is a lightning gem and so is ball lightning. On our helmet, we're just using a Hubris Circlet. We're using this for life resists. We got a bit of int on there as well, which is nice for a bit of extra ES. I mean, we have like 700, so we're about 5k altogether, which is what you want to aim for, I'd say. You probably want 5k life more than anything else though, but the main thing here is the Orb of Storms has 30% increased cast speed. Cast speed's really strong for Orb of Storms because it's the tick rate at which it hits, and if you get that up, it's a much more multiplier than like a little bit of extra added damage or anything like that. Whereas it here strikes every 0.58 seconds. So if we take this off, it strikes every 0.72. So that's not even getting that's like getting about, I can't do quick maths, but you can see that's almost a second a strike, right? Where this, you're almost getting 2 per second, so it's almost double damage right there. We can see the damage actually if we are on 53k DPS without the helmet, 43k. So it's adding 10k tooltip, which just goes to show you that it's probably pretty strong. You don't want to be too much of a tooltip warrior, but it's a good indication when your tooltip goes up by 10k DPS that something's doing well. So yeah, there are some other ones you could potentially use. Even the 20% one's probably worth going for. Other than that, maybe a ball lightning one if you want to increase your single target. But this also makes your clear better, because when you put it down, it's going to instantly tick. And so it's almost like an instant cast as it just explodes the whole screen, which is quite nice. So that's also another benefit. And then our amulet, we've actually got a talisman because I turned it into a talisman. I think it was a onyx amulet at first, but here you're just looking for multi and life. And then anything else really, maybe some attributes if you need them. I did, as you can see I've got 30 all attributes here, and a bit of all res that I crafted on. Like I said, I turned this into a talisman after the fact, and it was because one of my mates had a syndicate talisman bench that he didn't have anything to use on, so I was like, fuck it, use mine. And I got 10% increased max life, which is quite nice. So this is quite a juicy little amulet. And then we've anointed counterweight, which is this node over here. This is 60% increased global crit and 30 global crit multi while wielding staff. So incredibly strong node for us, probably better than Divine Judgment by a fair bit. Probably better than anything really in terms of raw DPS in our current setup. So that's why we've picked it. Obviously, if you want to be a bit more tankier, you could probably drop that damage, do something else. For our belt, we've just got a nice 69 strength Stygian Vise here, life resist. It's got mana on it because there's literally no other prefix worth crafting on it, so it's probably worth slamming since exalts are so cheap, so I may be slamming it at some point. I needed a lot of strength, at least back in the day. The only problem with this staff and the only downside to it is you need a lot of strength because it has a 40% increased strength requirement, which is why I needed some all attributes there and a big strength roll on one of my pieces of gear because obviously my ring slots are taken by uniques, so you can't get it there. So I did it on the belt, and I even have attributes modifier on there as well to get that even higher. But strength is also life, so it's not completely pointless. So there's a lot of life on this belt. We're at 4.3k, I think. That's breaking my helmet as well, so it's taking me down. But you know, with that on and the helmet, that's like 500 life right there. So, and then inside this, we got a little jewel here, and we've got some life, a bit of cast speed if you've crit recently, and increased damage if you've killed recently. Any of those are good. Obviously, phasing, onslaught, on kill are good. Flat damage to cold or lightning spells is good. Multi if you've killed recently, global multi is good. Any combination of those is a good jewel. So just bang them in there. Even move speed if you want some move speed. Then our boots, we want 30 move speed. Life, we needed a dex roll somewhere, so we put on our boots. Life resist. They're not even enchanted because I bought these boots not that long ago before, and then I swapped characters, so I haven't really been playing this guy recently. But he is rocking a no enchant boot, but I'd probably say increased cast speed if you've killed recently is probably decent. The penetration if you haven't killed recently will be good for bossing, which is where this build probably needs the help the most. Move speed if you haven't been hit recently is pretty good. Some added damage if you've killed recently or been hit recently, those two are pretty good. You need the fire. You need one fire damage roll to proc your Cinder Swallow anyway, which I don't even think I have at the moment. I don't even think I'm proccing the 10%, but I'll get onto that in a second. Actually, we'll cover it now. If you get fire damage to spells on one of your Bestials, you'll be able to proc Cinder Swallow. So just do that. I haven't even done that. So the only benefit I'm really getting is the increased crit onslaught and the recovery when you kill stuff. But there is actually a 10% multiplier on this flask if you're igniting stuff. So that's probably something I need to do, to increase my damage by 10%, which would be pretty nice because I don't have any other source of mobs take increased damage other than shock. So it is almost like a multiplier there. So that's probably worth doing. That's probably the biggest single damage upgrade I can get right now. Quite easily as well. But yeah, that's the boots. And I think that's it. Obviously, trinket doesn't matter to the build. My flasks, I'll do the gems after my flasks. I'm just using a diamond flask, removing freeze, because obviously every strong box that's not an ID'd has freeze on it. At least it does when you don't have a freeze immune flask. I'm joking, obviously, but that's usually how it feels. So freeze immune on that with some increased duration is quite nice. Diamond flask is going to be insane for an assassin, obviously. Move speed, increased duration. You can obviously get the double move speed flask. I haven't hit one yet this league. Using a mana flask because you do eat into your mana fairly fast when you're ball lightning stuff down. Obviously, when you're mapping, your Cinder Swallow, which is the last flask, is going to carry your life and mana, and ES if you plan on playing ES version of this build, which you probably could, and obviously the increased crit. It's the most expensive flask here though, and obviously a Bottled Faith instead of this for bossing maybe, if you can sort the mana issues out, would be a massive damage increase. So that's the gear. The links. I'm using a 21 Orb of Storms, which I corrupted myself, but they are fairly cheap, I believe. So always get a 21 spell gem if you can, because the base damage of the gem of a spell is in the gem. So a plus level from 20 to 21 is actually like a 5 to 10% more damage multiplier, and then everything's scaling off of that as well. So it's definitely worth investing in some 21 gems if you can. At least for the actual active skill. Then we've got increased area, just so like if we place this and the mob's over here, it's just going to zap it, because anything within close to this rim of this circle will get hit or zapped. And obviously if we cast inside it, it casts off us as well, which means it does more damage. Then we're using inspirations, more multi, more LE damage, reduces the mana cost, gives us crit. Inspiration is a nutty gem. Ice Bite to give us frenzies on kill and to give us some added cold as well, which is quite nice. And we don't really need too much help on our Orb Storms. It's going to clear the trash pretty well. And if you got a juice map, the explosions will kill the rares as well. So there's not too much ball lightning action going on when you're actually running around the map. Then we've obviously got Controlled Destruction. That's just a straight more spell damage multiplier. The reduced crit doesn't affect the assassin at all, because we get so much crit. And then Chain, obviously an Awakened Chain is going to be even more stupid. That's even correct English. It would just be insane, but obviously Awakened Chain's like 10x, and I don't feel like the extra chain is worth 10x, but if you have the money to splash out, get an Awakened Chain. It's a +1 chain. It's going to be even more clear. It's going to be even more insane. So definitely do that. Then our single target setup, we've gone for Ball Lightning. You don't have to use Ball Lightning. You can use Wave of Conviction. You can use what else did I try? I tried I did Wave of Conviction last year. It's pretty good. In my current setup right now, though, Ball Lightning is just insane even after the nerf. Just the way it functions, its mechanic. When it just lingers and it ticks over and over again as it's slowed down, it just does insane damage, as you saw against that T16. In the perfect scenario where you can just sit there and get like a line of them out, it does insane damage. Wave of Conviction's probably the second best, I would say. And then I'm trying to think, I've completely forgot what all the other lightning skills are. Basically any lightning skill that you think might be good, just try it and see what works for you. Obviously it has to be lightning because we're scaling all our lightning into cold, so but with Wave of Conviction you will have to use the Fizz to Lightning Gem, so that's one of your gem links taken, but its tooltip anyway goes nutty on the damage. Like a Wave of Conviction in my current setup right now would be like probably like 300k, whereas Ball Lightning only says 73k, but it just in reality does more damage. It just functions better. And to do that we need slower projectiles, because we want to slow the ball down so it ticks more on the same enemy. So less proj speed is more damage in single target situation. We're using Hypothermia because we're freezing and chilling everything. This is a 39% more damage. It's the line right at the bottom that counts the most for this. More damage with hits and ailments against chilled enemies. LE Focus because we don't really need to shock or freeze or crit or anything. Shock or freeze with this skill because our Orb Storms hits hard enough. It'll do that for us, and we should be placing that down when we're casting, because as you cast a lightning spell inside of Orb of Storms, it also procs another beam. So you just, that's kind of like a double combo of damage there. So, and this is just a more multiplier, 48% more multi, and it's only level 19, so I think it goes up to 49. So one of the biggest single damage gems you can get in this 6 link right here. Spell Echo, so you get 2 out in quick succession, essentially doubles your damage. And the only penalty is 10% less, I believe, 10% less damage, but having 2 shoot out is just OP. I did have Unleashed for the longest time, so every now and then, once I was running around, if something stayed alive, I'd shoot out 4 really quick, and they would do mad damage. But on a boss, you would just sit there, and obviously you wouldn't have this. So you shoot out like this, essentially, on a boss, and it just felt bad. As soon as you put Spell Echo in, it was just like, bop, 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 bop. As soon as you ramped up, it was dead. And then obviously Controlled Destruction. Like I said, reduced crit's not doing really anything for us because we have so much crit and it's a more multiplier. Then in my gloves, I've got Hex Touch support, which is basically Curse on hit, Wave of Conviction, Frostbite. And the reason I'm using Wave of Conviction to proc this rather than something easier is that Wave of Conviction itself applies an exposure as well. And if we look here, our tooltip, we're doing a shit. Well, as you can see, on our one link, our Wave of Conviction's got 100k sheet damage right there. That was just to my point earlier about Wave of Conviction always looks nutty on the tooltip, so don't be too wavered by that, I would say. But anyway, Wave of Conviction, it's doing a lot of cold damage, so that means it's going to proc cold exposure, which is I think minus 25% on this gem. Yeah, applies minus 25 to Ellie Res, matching the highest damage taken, which is obviously going to be cold. And all our damage is pretty much converted to cold. So not only are we putting 25% exposure on them, we're hitting them with a Frostbite as well because it's Curse on Hit, or Hex Touch support now. This is Curse on Hit if you're confused. And then we're also getting minus 44. So you want to make sure when you come up to a boss, the first thing you do is press that and make sure they're tagged. Obviously, if they're hex-proof, then you're just going to do a lot less damage. And if they resist cold or whatever, or Ellie Res, it's going to be a bit of a zero Z DPS situation. But is what it is. But that alone right there, if they're tagged by both those things, is a massive damage increase for like map bosses and unique mobs. And then I'm just leveling in Enhance. That's doing nothing. That's a spare slot right there. So if you have a better idea to do something with these links, there's your freedom. Our auras are Hatred and Herald of Ice. You could probably use Herald of Thunder and maybe do Curse on Hit with Herald of Thunder so it's more automated, because you will be shocking stuff because of these rings, so it'll be going off constantly. But I prefer Herald of Ice, not only for the MTX when stuff explodes, but also it does actually do a fair bit of damage when it kind of cleaves stuff. But like I said, with the explosion combination we've got here, it's really not doing too much. But I love the sound of shattering stuff and Herald of Ice going off, so that's just me. Then I'm using Steel Skin and Increased Duration because I have so much strength at the moment. I'm able to get a full Steel Skin in, and I just have it on my right click, so it just goes off on cooldown. And that's a 2.2k shield going off every like few seconds. So I mean, you can press it if you want to be a gold gamer and press it at the right time. You can have it on a different key, but I just automate it a little bit. Obviously, if I did it on cast when damage taken, it have to be a lot lower level. And at that point, I'd probably recommend just using an Immortal Cool, which will give you like a less damage taken multiplier while it's up, and it lasts like a second or two with duration. So I'd recommend that rather than this, but whichever one you prefer, this one's working fine for me. And then my final links are Void Sphere, Arcane Surge, Flame Dash, Second Wind. You can use Dash if you want rather than Flame Dash, but I had an MTX for Flame Dash, so I thought I'd use it. You also get 4 charges, and I think with one of the new Second Wind gems, you can get 5 charges of Flame Dash, which is pretty insane, so could be worth looking into. And Void Sphere is just for grouping mobs up. It really doesn't do anything at this point in the game, but it looks cool and it's a new skill. So I mean, that's a new gem slot there if you need one. Another thing you could do if you were using Wave of Conviction for your main skills, anyway, for your single target, you could put the Curse on Hit or the Hex Touch support on the Void Sphere, and then use that as your Curse on Hit, because it does do a big AoE and we're scaling area of effects, so that does actually tag a lot of stuff, and it'll be very easy just to place anywhere near the boss you're fighting and get the curse up. And if it's with Second Wind, you actually get 2 charges. You can't put 2 of them down, but you get 2 charges, so essentially you can chain react these together. When one runs out, put 1 down. You pretty much won't run out for a good 4 or 5 casts of them, which should be more than enough, right? So that's that. So I think that's everything covered here, and then in my offhand I'm just leveling stuff, so don't worry about that. I leveled with these weapons, by the way. If you want to know how I leveled, if you're going to twink level it, just use these weapons and just use Orb of Storms and Arc to level up. Very easy. Easy game. If you're starting from fresh, then obviously you just get what you're given, don't you, off the floor, so good luck with that. The tree. The tree is pretty standard for this kind of thing. We're taking pretty much all the power charges except the one over here. This is just too far and it's not worth it. We're taking any spell crit we can get, any crit chance, any life nodes that are along the way as well. Which you can see here, taking some life, taking some spell crit, power charge, big crit node here, big life node here. We've gone down here for this jewel. This is 3 points. I mean, there's probably 3 points somewhere else. You could spend maybe a medium cluster into a small. So just take this tree as more of a skeleton, I'd suppose, and do anything else you feel is better, because I don't think this is the best tree by far. There's probably a lot more things you can do, and I'm only level 92, so if you get to say level 95, which could be quite easy to do if you're smart with your maps and your mapping, your XP, well, just not dying basically, you can definitely level this guy up to at least like 95 quite easily. We're taking this here. This is a massive area node here, so I definitely recommend this since all our skills scale off area, which is another thing to note. If you're using Wave of Conviction as well, this is true for that. There's also area and lightning, so it means any spell, lightning or area effect damage or effect and damage we get is affecting both of our single target and our clear skill. So it's a very nice combination right there. So try use a skill that scales off everything that you've got, otherwise you're kind of wasting points sometimes. So that's massive area, obviously multi, more area damage, area of effect, more crit multi, or crit to spells, life, more life, a dual socket. This one's purely for phasing on hit and a bit of life. Don't have to take a phasing thing because you will want to phase. There will be times where you're running and get blocked. It's just kind of annoying. And so you could probably get onslaught and phasing on one jewel if you're lucky. We're coming down here to the Inquisitor side, so we can grab the big life nodes here and a couple of the elemental damage and area damage nodes. Very nice bit of the tree there. Then we're actually taking the top row. We're taking all the cold damage, increased cold damage, and a bit of cold pen there. Very strong. Cold penetration at this point in the build, where I am now, is probably the single most biggest damage increase I can get, especially against bosses, which is where I need the damage the most, to be honest. As you can tell, my map clear is perfectly fine. And then we've got a double multi-jewel here. This is like a 29% multi-jewel here. LE skills and lightning skills, quite nice. So obviously, these 3 jewels sockets I've got here, you could splash out and get like 40 multi and life percent if you have big dollars to spend. So, you know, that alone could add a lot of freaking damage. More life. We're taking the power node per charge buffs here, so we get more damage per power charge. We get crit multi, which is probably the biggest thing there. We get some extra crit chance and some mana regen. Obviously, being an assassin, we have, I think it's 7. 6, 7. Yeah, I think it's 7 by default. You can get a +1 on the helmet, which could be worth. That might be worth looking into. Either by corruption or warlord's influence, but they're a bit more expensive. More area of effect here. This is area effect per power charge, and then more big staff crit nodes. This is why I use a staff, because the staff nodes are just insane for crit and multi. And then we've got cluster jewel. We've got a large cluster jewel that's got blanketed snow. This is probably the biggest damage increase node you can get on a large cluster. Preferably you'd want that. Maybe the one that gives you LE damage leech plus some LE damage. And then probably the exposure on hit one. I think it has like a % chance to do exposure on hit. Because like I said, all the penetration at this point, because we have so much damage, the penetration is really what gives us that extra beef against a big tanky mob like a Conqueror or something. So yeah, as you can see, these are not very good jewels. And then here it seems more efficient just to grab some smalls, small life gems, and just get a bunch of life percent. Without these, I'm pretty low on percent life, so I do recommend grabbing some little clusters like this because they're so efficient for life. It's actually insane, and as you can see here, I've even got one with like some reses on it. This one's got double res, look. It's like 14 and 12% there to fire and lightning. And then obviously the big life node. So I think that's the tree. You can obviously splash out for a Watcher's Eye on Hatred because we're using Hatred. Because that's a more cold damage multiplier. You can get base crit, you can get cold pen, you can get increased cold damage. You get a combination of all of those. You could put a level 1 precision in and get more multi. The Watcher's Eye here can be insane. It's entirely up to you how much money you want to put into it. But yeah, I haven't reached that point yet. Maybe I can get Hatred crit duel at some point. I'd say it's probably the most. That and the penetration would be the strongest. I believe our crit sat in town is like almost 40%. So you can imagine with all our power charges up and our Ascendancy, which brings me on to my Ascendancy, the Assassin. We're obviously getting base crit while we're at maximum charges. We're getting multi per charge. We're getting some move speed while at max. We have pretty much instant like sustain of power charges. We've got elusive, which is quite nice. This elusive makes you fast, makes you take some less damage and dodge and all that. So it's a nice defensive layer. And then I've actually taken opportunistic over ambush and assassinate. I was using this for the longest time, but I switched to this purely for the move speed. Now, you can take either or, but I think this one is more damage, I'm not going to lie, than the 25% more here. This reads 25% more while there is at most 1 rare. So basically what it means is when there's 1 rare near you, you get 25% more damage. Now you'd think that'd be better than this, but I don't know what it is about this node, but when you get a mob below 35% life and all the low life kicks in here, like the more damage and the 100% crit, and then you cold them at 10%, you insta give them a below 35%. It's almost like a 35% cold in my opinion, and it is insane. So I don't know which one's better technically. I feel like in practice this one is better for straight up raw damage, and it's better for mapping in the sense that your explosions are more likely to crit, because if you hit a mob that's full life, so say they're about to get cleaved by an explosion, there's 100% more crit against them. So with all the crit you already have with Assassin, you're literally going to 100% crit them with an explosion, which means your chain reaction is just much more reliable. And obviously you get extra multi as well, so it's hitting harder, and the cold, built-in cold's always nice. You can always get cold somewhere else. It's quite easy to get that though, I suppose. That's one of the cons, I would say. Easy to put cold on like a golem or something. But this purely, I would say, is for move speed. If you just want to be a speedy motherfucker and just zoom through the map, 20% move speed if you've killed recently is insane. And you do get some extra benefits, like doing 25% more damage against bosses as long as they're singled out, or a rare that's singled out, and a bit of reduced damage when there's more than 1 rare. So it's not completely pointless. It's not just for the move speed. There is more damage there to be had, but I feel like in practice this one just works out better. I can't count the amount of times I was fighting like a conqueror, and say I threw out some ball lightnings under my Orb of Storms, and obviously they were ticking. I would run off to dodge something, and they would just die. And last time I looked at their health, they were at like 30%. So I was like, oh, it's still 30% of this fight left. And all of a sudden they just go, ugh, and they're just dead. And you're like, what the hell just happened there? But it's obviously because this kicks in and it just does insane damage. So that's that. I think that's everything. If I forgot anything, or I spoke too fast, or I didn't explain anything, or maybe I've straight up just jumped over something, I'm not, I can't remember, leave a comment down below, that's fine. And obviously if you have any questions about the build, leave a comment down below and I'll try and answer them as best to my ability. And obviously if you want to see some PoE gameplay live in action, follow me on Twitch, and also follow me on Twitter. Twitter's there. It'll obviously be down in the description, both my Twitter and my Twitch. Currently I'm playing a a Kinetic Blast Power Siphon guy, which I might end up doing a build thing on if I can get the single target up a bit more. It's still a little bit lackluster. And then I also have a Blade Blaster, which is going to be a single target build for killing bosses and conquerors that I'm currently building. I'm trying to 6-link a Carcass Jack for that. So obviously once that's 6-linked, I can maybe start that project a bit better. So there might be 2 more overview type build things to come, but we'll see. But yeah, like I said, this is my go-to League starter, Orbistorm's Assassin. It scales incredibly well at the start, and it has a lot of headroom for investment, so I definitely recommend it. The only downside, like I said, is you're an assassin, so you're squishy. So if you hate dying, I wouldn't recommend it. But if you don't mind getting one-shot randomly every now and then while you're in a big juicy map, basically if you've played an evasion-based build before, which, you know, you're untouched forever, and then all of a sudden one thing gets through your layers of dodge and evasion and just kills you, and you just die randomly and you don't even know what killed you. If you're fine with that, then you'll be fine with this. It just requires a little bit more mechanical skill on some of the fights when it comes to conquerors and stuff. Otherwise, you will be dying constantly. But other than that, it's a 10 out of 10 build. It's very satisfying, and that's all I've got to say about it. If you've made it to this point still, thanks for watching. Remember to check out all my links in the description, and I will see you in the next one, or in a stream if you're a legend and you come and say hi. Peace out, everyone. Bye.